Oh buddy, Andy here again. When I'm recording this video while I'm updating my iPhone, and I've heard great horror stories about the iPhone iOS 5 update and all this sort of stuff. My son did it about a week ago. He's got an iPhone 4. I inherited his iPhone 3GS, and I was secretly hoping that there might be an iPhone 5 so that I might get his old iPhone 4, but it hasn't quite worked out like that. But I've heard all these horror stories, so I'm doing that now, so this video could go completely ballistic in a minute and something might blow up on the computer, because you never know. There's heard all these horror stories, and things might get wiped out and an atomic bomb might go off in the background or something. But talking about modern technology and how we rely on modern technology, and I was having a conversation on Twitter the other day. I did a video a couple of videos ago about social media and how work had sort of impacted on that, and how I never used to use social media or not involve social media with work. But another side of that has come along is because I, as you may well know, I left my job, was made redundant, retired, whatever, whichever way you want to put it, a year ago in June, July of this year. Now, I'd worked on the railway since I left school for getting very nearly 36 years, and I'd always worked in the sort of southeast of England, but I worked at several different depots. I worked in Eastbourne, I worked in Brighton, in Hastings, I worked in Tunbridge, and I worked in London as well for 3 years at Waterloo. And you get to know a lot of people through that. And I it didn't matter where I went, I used to bump into people that I worked with, because you literally sort of meet people who live pretty much all over the country. And I used to, it didn't matter if I went back to where I used to live, I used to bump into someone that I used to know or something like that. And when you leave that sort of work environment, I'm sure it's the same for lots of other environments, but because it's like a transport thing, and you're moving around, and because you know these people all over the place, it does become like a little bit of a family. It's like an insulated thing also, because the nature of the workplace, it was quite a fairly unique working environment because of the shift work and the nature of the work as well. And I suppose it's a fairly skilled job in its own way. I was a train driver, and then I was a manager as well. Not everybody does that, and this just takes a certain type of person. I don't mean that in a nasty way, but it takes a certain type of person, partly because of the disruption, because of shift work, etc. And the shift work's crazy shift work. It's not like a regular shift pattern. It's literally all over the place. And then there's the restrictions, drug and alcohol policies, which means you can't do certain things that other people do at the weekends and things like that. But it does become a bit of a family, and you do get sort of institutionalized, I suppose, and then you become insulated, and you don't realise what goes on in the outside world. And I was as bad, and people who worked in the railway environment for a long time don't realise what it's like out in the big bad world. As I said, you're insulated into it, and people come in and tell you about things. No, it's not like that really. But obviously when you leave that, anybody has that. If they leave work, they retire, whatever sort of circumstances, if you worked anywhere for any length of time, it's a shock. And people always used to say to me is that it wasn't the work that they missed when they did retire, when they did leave or whatever. Quite a few people used to leave and then come back again. We've seen the last of them. Oh no, they come back with a tail between their legs or whatever, and they find they couldn't work in a different environment. There's that sort of you miss the people, and I'm sure it's the same, as I said, in many other workplaces. If you spend any time with them, it's the people. You don't necessarily miss the work or the working environment as such. It's the people that you miss, the people that you've grown up with, the people that you've worked with for that length of time. And what so often happens, and would have happened to me, I'm sure, as being one person who never really socialised a huge amount when I was at work, was that when you do leave, it's gone. And that used to really knock people. I can remember back in the olden days, the old boys, the old steam guys who left the railway, and literally within about 6 months they died, and it sounds awful. They didn't have anything else outside. Now we have other stuff outside. You leave, hopefully people have got interests, they've got things like this that they can delve into, and older people can do it as well. But the one thing you have got above all else is social networking. We've got phones, talking about iPhones, people keep in touch far more than they used to, whether it be tweeting, and I've done it, and I've mentioned it in that video that I mentioned earlier, and others as well. I've kept in touch with people, some people who I never honestly expected to be in touch with, but I'm glad that I am. And even sort of more tenuous links to other people. You can follow people who are on the railway and get some indication of what's going on, and still feel that you're a part of it, even if you don't necessarily want to be. But it's still quite nice to have some sort of little insight. Think, oh yeah, I remember that sort of stuff. Oh yeah, they should be doing that, or all those type of things. But you can keep in touch. And as I said, I was having this conversation with someone on Twitter, surprisingly enough, literally just the other day, and I mentioned in another video about people contacting me, people that I would never have been in contact with if Facebook hadn't have existed, if even doing it through YouTube videos. People can see me, oh, I saw you doing this, or whatever it might be. We are very, very lucky to live in this particular age. As I said, when I think back to those people that I used to work with years ago, and are probably sadly no longer with us, I remember when they retired, and they were absolutely dreading it. They retired on the 65th birthday or whatever as it was then. They had to go. They didn't want to go. They knew what was around the corner. They were going to miss all those work colleagues, those people that they spent, a big proportion of their life with. You spend more time with your work colleagues often than you do with your wife or your family or something like that. They mean a big part of your life. You might not realise that at the time until you leave, or when you're coming up to leave and you think, hang on a minute, I'm not going to see him or her or whatever ever again, potentially. That's a big tie. That's a big wrench in your life, a big thing in your life. But now we have got this, and we should be very thankful. The modern technology that has come along has enabled us to keep in contact with work colleagues, and it doesn't matter where they are, does it? They could be in the other side of the world and you could still be in contact with them. I know an ex-work colleague who moved to Australia. We don't correspond very much, but he's a friend of mine on Facebook. That would never have happened all those years ago. Hi, Colin. But it's that sort of thing, and you can keep in touch with your family and all that type of thing as well. And of course, what can come out of that is that you'd strike up conversations with people, and you end up meeting up with people, maybe people that you hadn't thought about, as I said earlier, or maybe old work colleagues that you probably would never have seen again when you had left. I've done that. I'm sure it will lead to other things. You can do that as well, so don't be afraid of it. But you don't have to wait till you leave work to do that. You can keep in contact with other people, but as I said, you do have to be careful sometimes if you're mixing work and pleasure as well. Don't forget that. But at least when you do leave, the world's your oyster. You can keep in contact with all those people, still feel as though you are a little bit a part of that family, not been ostracised or thrown out on the scrap heap. And as I said, the social media world, the new technology world has made that happen. And I, for one, am pretty grateful about that. So maybe I'll see you out there sometime. Thanks for your time. I'll speak to you again soon. Goodbye.